Okay, hi everybody. Tom Fernandez here, um, coming to you from beautiful Gunnison, Colorado, up in the up in the up in the mountains here, and it's a beautiful day. And went down to the forget the name of it, Tamakichi River, Tomichi River, some river that's near here. Real nice. Walked around with the dog. Had a great time. Today, I am going to talk about some software that I'm working on. And if you're into that, then that'll be good. And if not, it'll probably put you to sleep. But in any case, that's what I'm going to do today. I'm working on some software that is like a framework for developing multi-threaded, multi-windowed programs, and makes it real easy to write software, and also the software that's written is easy to use. So, and it's a work in progress, but it's working pretty good right now. So let's go ahead and get started with that. And so here we are in Visual Studio, and we'll just take a quick look at the Solution Explorer. So you need to have this DLL, and the system that I've written is in that DLL. So other than that, you need to create this thing called app code. And this is a class called app code, and this is how it starts out. This is just some syntactic sugar that makes the whole thing work. But in any case, you can see that the class app code has a constructor that doesn't do anything and has no other functionality. And so this is how it starts. And this is where you'll write the code that will be your application. But let's just run it, run the program without any application code. And you can see all you get is this one little window up here called command input. And here you can type commands. So you can type, for example, one command you can type is beep. And it's not, you can't hear it real well on the video, but it creates a little beep. So there's actually a whole bunch of commands that you can make. And if you, one of the commands is help, and it has an argument called sys that'll show you all the system commands that come built into the system. So here's a little window that it's called help, and it shows all the system commands. And so there's a whole bunch of them. We already looked at one, which was beep, and we looked at another one, which was help. But there's a whole bunch of commands here, and they let you control. There's a whole bunch of commands that let you create and control text windows. For example, here's one that lets you control the font size. So let's go ahead and execute one of these. So I'll just put that in here, and you have to put in the name of the window where you're changing the help, the font size, and I'll just use help because that's the window that we have right now. And I'll make the font 35, which will be too big, but we can make it smaller. Okay, so text win set font size help 35. Okay, well 35 is too big, but we can make it smaller. So you can use the up arrow key to go to previous commands, and then you can just modify them. We'll make it 25. Okay, so 25 is reasonable. And of course, it's just a window like any other, so we can stretch it out a little so we can see the whole commands. So these are different commands that you can run. And we played around with a few of them, and we'll play around with some more. One thing you can do is you can see what are the help, what are the commands that come from the application. And we can see that there are none. And that, of course, is because the thing is empty. Now, we could add a command by simply adding a function to this class called appcode. So when we add a function to this class called appcode, we end up with see, uh, yes, let's see. I've got all the stuff I want to type. I've got it all in this. I've got it all in this folder so that you don't have to watch me type. Um, so now, back over here, we're going to add a new command called say hello. And when you say hello, we'll put something in a window, and we're going to call it the hello window. But it doesn't exist, so we're going to have to do. Um, oh, by the way, all of these commands, when you can use them in from the command line, you can use them in batch files, and you can also use them in C sharp. If you use them in C sharp, you have to put the word G in front of it. So G dot, and I'm just going to say text when set text when create. So we need to create a window called hello before we can write to it. And everything is case sensitive, so we have to make sure it's capitalized the same. And put a semicolon there. And now we've added a new command to the system. It's a command called say hello. So let's run the program again. And this time we'll just say hello. And there we go. It created a window called hello. And in the window it says hello, Tom. Okay, so that's good. Um, there's another way that you can create commands. You can create commands by creating batch files. So let me go and create a batch file. And by the way, the batch file commands, you can create them on the fly. So I can leave the program running. So if you have the user of a program, say the program is running a bank or whatever, it could run a hotel or an RV park or whatever it ran, and somebody wanted a new command, they wouldn't have to shut down the program. They could add a new command with a batch file. So let's go ahead and we'll leave it running and we'll create a new batch file. Now the batch files are just text files. So I'll create a text file. Go ahead and open that. And I'll just say hello. Now in the batch file, the parentheses, well, the semicolon is always optional. But if the command has no parameters, like say hello has no parameters, then the parentheses are optional as well. But I usually leave them in. So, and you can put application commands, you can also put system commands. So I'll just say help, and one of the options for help is help. So if you want help with help, you can just say help, help. Okay, so now we'll save this file. So we'll save it in a directory called batch that's at the same level as the bin and the object files in your solution, in your C# thing. And I'm just going to call this hello3.txt. Oh, I've already got one, but that's fine. I'll just save it as hello3.txt. It says it's already there, but I'll replace it. File in current use and cannot be overwritten. Okay. Well, it doesn't matter because the file is the same. So let me close this. I'll close this file. Want to save it? Don't save it. And we can go look at hello3. It's the same as what we just did. So, okay. So now, remember we left the program running? So we can go back to it and we can see it. And now I can type hello 3 and it has no parameters. And by the way, the batch files can also have parameters, but we'll talk about that another time. So I can say hello 3 with a semicolon. The semicolon's always optional. And since it has no parameters, the parentheses are also optional. So I can type hello 3. Now I'm getting a warning here. Let me move this out of the way. I'm getting a warning here because remember that function say hello created a text window. So it says attempt to create an existing text window hello, and I can just click OK. Now, normally this dialog box wouldn't come up. If there was a systems message, if there was a text window open called system messages, these things would all go into that, and I wouldn't have to click OK. So I'll say OK and OK. And you can see that it did help help, which shows all the help options. And it also ran say hello 3 times on top of the first time that was already run. Now, there is a special batch file. Let me go ahead and close this. So there's a special batch file called underscore system startup.txt. And underscore system startup.txt is a special batch file because it runs when the program starts. And so we can put a lot of stuff in it that's sort of to set up the program and to do configuration stuff. So here's an example. I'll go ahead and put in some stuff here. So let me go back over here. Okay, so this is a batch file that will run when the system sets up. And notice the first 2 lines don't actually do anything because they're started with backslash backslash, and that makes them comments. So it's useful to put comments in your program and in your batch files just to tell it what they do. Um, this is just the name of the text file. So there's two commands here. There's set application name and var set. And let's just talk about it. Set application name just sets the name of the application. You can call it anything you want. You can call it my dumb program. That'll be fine. So you can name your application anything you want. Now, the rest of these commands, and by the way, you can put in blank spaces. So there's 4 times I've used the command varset. And what varset does is it creates a variable for the system. And the first parameter is the name of the variable. And the second parameter is the value of the variable. So I've created a variable named copyright year, and its value is 2023. I've created a variable called copyright holder, and its value is Dr. Thomas Fernandez, which is me. I've also created a variable called data_dir name, and it shows its value is the path to a place where I can read and write files from this system. So just a place where you want to keep all the data for your program. And this could be a root directory, and you could have subdirectories within it as well. Now, this next one is interesting. I've created a variable named editor, and I've included the path and the executable file name for Notepad++. Now, this is in quotes, and the reason it's in quotes is so that this whole thing will be handled as a single string. Otherwise, the parser will find this closed parentheses right here, and it'll confuse the parser. And so if a parameter is a string that has things that might confuse the parser, like a closed parentheses, you have to put it in quotes so it'll be treated as a single string. This up here, this one's okay because none of these characters will confuse the parser. Okay, so those are some commands that will sort of set up the configuration of the program. Let's add some more commands. And it may seem a little complicated, but it's not really, and I'll explain it all. So these are all commands that I'm going to put in the system startup.txt file. So let me copy all these in, and we'll go here, and I'll just copy these. Now, it may seem a little complicated, but it's not. In fact, let me get rid of some stuff so that it's less complicated. And I'll just explain what this does. So the first thing, we're going to make a command later called multi-thread demo. And that's going to illustrate the strength of the system because it allows you to create multi-threaded apps very easily. But if you thought multi-threaded demo was too long, or if you just didn't like what a command was and you thought there was something that you'd prefer, you can use this command called make command synonym. And here, the first argument is a string that will substitute for the command. So say you're just lazy and you don't want to type multi-thread demo, you just want to type MTD. Well, that's fine. So now, after using this make command synonym, you can just type mtd and it'll work the same as multi-thread demo. Okay, so this next one is make minimize text windows false. Well, there might be certain applications or certain circumstances where you want all the text windows to come up minimized. Make background 3, and I'm going to use 0 because I like it better. Right now there's 0, 1, 2, and 3, and I'll probably add more. But what they do is they create a background behind all of your windows so that you won't get distracted by other things that are going on your computer. But it's easy to get rid of it. If you just click on the background, it'll disappear. Okay, so this next one, and I don't think this show window is required, so I think that's not required. I'll get rid of it. I may put it back in if it turns out it is required. So I'm creating a window, text window create at. Now we already looked at text window create. This is text window create at. So it specifies where the window will be created. And this window is called command history. And it's got 4 parameters that follow it. All are floating point numbers. And it's where the thing will be. And the first parameter is the left side of the window. So by saying 0.0 means that it'll be all the way on the left. So these are all relative to the screen. So this second one, the first one is the left, the second one is the top, and it says 0.15. So it'll be 15% of the way down on the screen. This next one is the width, and it says that the window will be half the width of the screen. And this next one is also 0.5, and it says that the height will be half the height of the screen. And this is a good way of doing it because it doesn't matter what your screen resolution is, because all of these are relative to the screen. So, and the reason I'm putting it 0.15 down is because the command input window takes up the first 15% at the top of the screen. Now, this command history window is special, so we're not going to allow it to close. And we're going to set its font size to 14. Now, we're going to do the same with the system's messages window, except it'll sit below the other one, and it will be smaller. And also set the font to 14. And this is where error messages and warning messages will go, so that it doesn't pop up that dialog box and you have to click OK. Okay, so the system is going to create these 2 windows. And the next commands are kind of interesting because what they do is they're assigning the function keys to commands. Now, we already looked at some of the help commands, but now we're assigning this help command to F1. So now, instead of having to type out help all, I can just press the F1 key. And help com will show the system commands and the application commands, and they will be displayed when you press Control F1. And if you want to see what batch files you have, you can press Shift F1. And if you want help for help, you can press Control Shift F1. So all of these commands are now assigned to different function keys. And I think this is a good interface because it allows the entire functionality of the program to be assigned to function keys. and it's kind of a, it's kind of an easy interface for people, um, and you can make a special window and just mention what the function keys are. But there's also a help that will do that. Okay, so then there's standard label syscom. I'm going to get rid of these because they're not necessary. They were commented out anyway. But standard label syscom will label the command window with information from that we set up here. So it'll let you, we'll see it later. It'll say my dumb program, and it'll say the copyright year and the copyright holder and all that stuff. And then go to command line. We'll go to the command line, display command history being true. And I think I'm going to move this down a little bit. So I'm going to move it down right above the start. And what display command history will do is that every time a command is executed, it'll be displayed in the command history window that we created up here. Now, you can turn it on and off as you wish. So it might be useful to turn it off. If you had a batch file with 100 commands in it, you could turn it off, and then you'd only see the name of the batch file. There's also another thing here called verify closing on. And what this will do is when you close the program, and you can close the program by closing the command input window, it'll ask you then if you really want to close your program, because it'll warn you that if you haven't saved your data or done, if you haven't saved your data, then your data might get lost. So it'll give you a chance to back out of closing the window. There's also go to command line, and that just moves the cursor and the focus to the command line. Now, the last thing that this batch file does is it calls start. And start is just another batch file. Now, the way it works is that the programmer should write this file, the underscore system startup file, and he's the one that'll set up which windows are available, what the function keys are assigned to, and other things like whether or not there'll be a dialog box asking you if you want to close, all that good stuff. So that's for the programmer, but the start batch file, which you can see here is empty, would be something that the end user could configure. So here we'll just put in one command, just say hello. Or you can nest the batch files. You could say hello 3. And all of these, again, the parentheses and the semicolon are optional. I tend to put them in just because it helps me see that that is a function. In any case, that's what the start.txt is going to do. It's going to call a batch file. The batch files can be nested, so you can write a batch file that calls a batch file that calls a batch file, and that should all work. Okay, so let's program. We've made a bunch of changes to the program. So let's see. Well, we didn't really change the program. We just changed the batch files. But let's rerun the program. And remember, when the program starts up, it's going to automatically run the startup system startup.txt, and then it's going to run start.txt. So let's go ahead and run that. Okay, so remember the start.txt ran hello 3, and it ran the help for help, which is here. I'll go ahead and slide that over. And then it ran say hello 3 times. But of course, 2 of those times it gave a warning, but it didn't come up as a dialog box. It just listed it in system messages, which is more convenient. So if you don't have a window called system messages, it'll create that little dialog box, and you have to keep clicking hello. Notice the command history. We turned it on at the end of the system startup file, so it only listed commands that were executed after it was executed, and so we got the start command, the hello 3, and then the help say hello, say hello, say hello. Now there's something interesting here. The colon, the square bracket 0 colon that goes in front of the command shows which thread it's running on, because this is a multi-threaded system. So you can have multiple threads. So all you have to do to make a new thread is to put something in front of the colon. The square brackets just work like the quote signs, so they don't really do anything. So you could leave the square brackets out. But there are cases where you need to use square brackets if you have, see, you can have commands that are parameters to other commands, and in which case you should put them in square brackets. Okay, so let's add another command to the system, and this time we're going to do it in C#, which means we have to restart the program. So I'll go ahead and notice here, when I close the program, it comes up with a little dialog box asking me, are you sure you want to quit? And I'll say yes, but it would give me an opportunity to back out of it. And that was because I had used this command, verify closing on. I think I'll change it to off so that, because there's nothing, this is a little demo program, so it's not going to matter. Okay, so here, let's add a new command. We're going to add, we'll add a new command called count2x. And we'll play around a little bit with the threading. So let's go back to Visual Studio and add a new command. And we've also added a variable to the system called start from 1. Now this command, count2x, takes a parameter x, and it creates a window called counting at a specified location. And then it goes, for I equals start from, I is less than start from plus x, I plus plus, and then it does this write line command, which will write a string to a window. So I'm using I to string. Then it'll sleep for 400 milliseconds. And when it's all done with that loop and it's counted all the way up to, we'll do it to 10, then it changes the start from and adds x to it. So the next time it runs, it'll start from 11. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this. Oh, okay, so all this is good. I'm going to close some of these windows because I don't need them. And now I'll just say count to X, and I'll just say 10. And you can see it created a window called counting, and it counted from 1 to 10. Now, if I run it again, and I can get to previous commands by just pressing the up arrow. I can just press the up arrow. So, but this time it's going to start from 11. Let's see what happens. We can see it's counting, but it's counted from 11 to 20. And if I run it again, but let me just show you something here. The real power of the system is its ability to be multi-threaded. And so if I run this command, count to 10, on a different thread, so I'll just say, you can name the threads anything you want. Usually I just use numbers, but I'll use new thread as the name. And so I'm using new thread as the name. So it'll create a new thread. It's actually more than a thread. I'm calling it a top. It has a copy of the app code, its own copy of the app code, by the way, which means that when this runs, that start from variable will be reset back to 1, or it'll start at 1. So let's go ahead and run this, but watch what happens. It's not going to start from 31. It's going to start at 1. So I'm running it now, and you can see it's counting up from 1 to 10. Now, if I run it on the old thread, and by the way, if you don't specify a thread, it'll use thread 0. So that's just the thread that it'll use. So if I run this again, now it's going to start at 31. See how it's counting up from 31 to 40. So this is the beauty of the system, is that app code that the user writes, it gets a fresh copy for each thread. And actually, I call them tops because they're more than threads. In any case, that's cool, but I'm going to do a multi-thread demo now. And so we're going to add 3 more functions, but only 2 commands. And I'll show you how we can add 3 functions, but only get 2 commands. So I've got this other function, count to. I've got a function called make t wins, and I've got let me put them in Visual Studio, and we'll take a good look at them. Okay, so I'll put all these at the top. Okay, so like I said, we've added 3 functions. One is called count to, the other one is called make t wins, and there's another one called multi-thread demo. Okay, so count to just takes a window name, a limit that it wants to count up to, and a delay in milliseconds where it's going to go to sleep between printing each number. So those are the parameters to count to. Now that is a new command. We can use that in the system. Now this is another function called make t wins, but because it's marked as private, it will not become a command to the system. It's just like a helper function, and it's a helper function to the multi-threaded window. And what multi-threaded window is going to do is it's going to make the T wins. Now, if you want to execute a command from C# code, you can just say command.execute, and it takes one argument, and that's the string that makes up the command. And the reason we're doing this instead of just calling the function, because we could just call the function count2, but we want to execute these commands on different threads. So you can see at the beginning of each of these commands, it's got the name of a thread or the name of a top. I prefer to call them tops, but they really are threads, but they're kind of like threads on steroids. So we can see that there's going to be 22 threads, but there's only 20 windows because two of these threads in the top row are going to print to the same window. See, T9 prints to W9 and T10 prints to W9 as well. So what happens is each thread, most of the threads are going to print to their own private window that only they use. But two of these threads are going to share the window. Well, I should say two of the threads in the top row are going to share the same window, and two of the threads in the bottom row are going to share the same window. And we're going to see how this works. Now, just to make this simpler, I'm going to go to start.txt. I'll let it do the hello thing. Well, I'll do three commands. I'll do count to x 10, and I'll also do multi-thread demo. So the start command is going to have those three commands in it. Count to x10. Now, because they're all running on the same thread, they're going to wait till each one is done before the next one starts. But if I put each of these on separate threads, they would all run at the same time. But let's go ahead and run this. So I'm going to Control 5. So it's doing the count to 10, so it's counting up to 10. Then it did the hello Tom along with the warnings. And now it's doing the multi-thread demo. And you could see that each of those windows runs independently. And over here, the ones on the far right, you can see that multiple threads are writing to the same window. So it goes 1, 2, 3, then the other thread said 1, then it went 4, then it went 2 and 5 and 3 and 6 and 4, because the threads are writing independently. Now, normally it would mix up the characters of each number, but I put in a semaphore so that when one is writing to the window, the other one has to wait till it's done. So they're taking turns doing the actual writing. And this is true for the two windows on the far right. So they both have multiple threads that write to them. The rest of them all have a single thread, and they've all counted from 1 to 20. I'm going to do a small change here. I'm going to go to the go in the app code, and I'm going to change this, and I'll do a global change. It's a little tricky because there's other commas Remember the parameters. The first parameter is the window that it's going to use. The second parameter is what it counts up to. And the third parameter is the milliseconds between each number. So you can see each thread has a different number of milliseconds that it waits. So they're all going to be like on their own timing. Now I'm going to do Control F. I'm going to change the comma 20 comma. It's a little tricky because there's more than one comma to, I'll make it 1,000 because 3,000 is just a little too long. But it's easier to see the multi-threaded action if the count goes on a little longer. So I'll go ahead and replace all. It replaced 22 because there's 22 threads. Remember, there's only 20 windows, but there's 22 threads because 2 of the windows have 2 threads writing to them. And now I'll run the whole program again. And now you can see each thread got started in sequence, and the ones on the far left are already up to 1,000, but the ones on the right have a longer delay between writing the numbers, and the ones on the far right have 2 threads that are both writing to the same window. And so I think I'll probably wrap this up here, but I think this illustrates the power of the system. Although I will just say this while that's running, I'm going to do, I forget what it was, Control F1 gave me all the commands. Okay, so now it lists the app code commands. So there's count 2, count 2x, multi-thread demo, and say hello. Now remember when we created that synonym for multi-thread demo? I can, these are almost done. Instead of, if I wanted to run this again, I could just type MTD, which is short for multi-thread demo. Oh wait, it's almost finished. Okay, so I'm going to get a bunch of error messages because it's going to try and recreate all those windows. But notice they're just warnings, and what the system will create messages, but it doesn't stop the program from running. So if you type something that's completely wrong, let's say I mistype a command, hello 3 instead of hello 3. So what's going to happen? Well, I got a little sound, and if I go look at system messages, it'll say hello 3 and command.setup, invalid command, use help all for a list of valid commands. So it's trying to help us. Give us some error messages. Most of these error messages are more useful to me as the programmer, but I try to put in a little bit of a hint to tell a user that they did something wrong. But notice the program hasn't crashed. It's still running. So I can go back and type in a valid command. Now, MTD is the synonym for multi-thread demo. And so I can run that now. And I'm going to get a bunch of warnings because it's going to try and create all those 20 text windows. I think I have a delay in the warning, or maybe it's the beeping sound that delays it. But in any case, it won't stop it from running. I'm gonna I'm gonna I'm gonna close the help here, and we can see that the multi-threaded demo is running again, even though we got all the warnings about making existing text windows. But didn't stop the program from running. By the way, this back here, this sort of sea green type area, but actually it fades from red over here to sea green, and that's to avoid you from being distracted. But if you click on it, it'll disappear. And now, so remember how I typed MTD? Well, there's something else I could do. Let me close this, and I could go back to that system startup where I assigned the function keys. So I could assign function key 5 could be MTD. And let me go back to startup, and I will comment out hello 3 and also the multi-threaded demo, and we'll run this. And now it's just going to count from 1 to 10, and now it's done. And now there's 3 ways to demo. I could type in multi-threaded demo, or I could type MTD, or now I can just press F5. You can't see it, but that's what I'm going to do. I pressed F5. Well, have to have the focus there. And it runs the multi-threaded demo. Okay, guys, so I think that's it. I don't know if the camera's working. Yes, it is. So I'll just say goodbye, and hopefully you found this interesting. And if not, then you can always watch it while you, if you're having trouble sleeping, because this will help you sleep. Anyway, guys, have a great. Bye bye.